Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. So, have you ever stopped and wondered why certain local ghost stories feel so, well, incredibly real, like they could actually happen to you? Today, we're diving deep and breaking down the anatomy of a truly chilling urban legend. We're going to examine how local folklore, deep psychological dread, and totally impossible timelines all blend together to create these stories that just refuse to die out. We're starting by setting the scene right in Bimrapur village. It's 7 p.m., freezing cold night. Two young guys, Karan and Vikram, are huddled by a crackling campfire, swapping terrifying local rumors about a nearby river. And then, they're joined by this highly respected guy in the community, a 22-year-old veteran school teacher named Ramesh Shuklaji. And tonight's the night Shuklaji is finally breaking his long-held silence. He's going to confess exactly why he never ever travels alone. Now, I want you to think about your own daily commute for a second. For most of us, the train is this ultimate symbol of modern safety, right? It stays on the tracks, it moves completely predictably from point A to point B. So, what exactly happens to our basic sense of reality when that predictable journey gets hijacked by something totally unexplainable? That right there is the central, absolutely terrifying premise of the urban legend we're analyzing today. Looking at our source material, the way they set up this frame narrative is honestly brilliant. You see, really effective urban legends always need a grounded, totally credible narrator to make the impossible seem plausible. By having this seasoned veteran teacher be our guide, the story instantly demands respect. When Shuklaji overhears these boys talking about strange, crying voices near the river, his demeanor completely shifts. His face gets dead serious, his hands actually start to tremble. He looks up at the dark sky, and it's like even the wind just stops, as he offers to tell them the real truth about a place called ghat. He even warns them up front, once you hear this, you're going to think twice before you ever speak its name again. Okay, so what exactly is ghat? To really get this story, we have to understand the locus of the horror here. In this specific region, ghat isn't just some geographical coordinate on a map. In local lore, it's considered a literal supernatural death trap. Like Shuklaji warns the boys, some roads are made for the day and some for the dark. Ghat is, without a doubt, the latter. It's an established boundary where the normal rules of life and death just don't apply anymore. And the scariest part? Those who cross into it are said to never come back. Section 1. The empty train station. Rajapur's eerie isolation. So let's jump back in time to when Shuklaji was just a 24-year-old student heading home after an exam in Indore. He arrives at the Rajapur train station at around 7 p.m., and right away, something is very, very wrong. The station is totally deserted. No crowds, no noise, just this eerie, heavy silence, broken only by a single, flickering yellow tube light. It sets up this atmosphere of profound isolation right from the get-go. And this part perfectly shows how urban legends construct a psychological baseline of dread way before the actual monster shows up. While he's sitting there waiting, Shukla gets a call from his mother, and she is inexplicably panicked. She tells him her heart is incredibly anxious, she's begging him to just stay the night somewhere, and pleads with him not to speak to anyone on the way home. It's our first major omen. I mean, if there's one universal survival rule we all know, it's that you never, ever ignore an Indian mother's panicked intuition, right? Even from miles away, her maternal instinct is screaming that this journey is fundamentally cursed. Literally, right after he hangs up that phone call, we get hit with the second, much more supernatural warning. Out of absolutely nowhere, this thin, frail old beggar appears right in front of Shukla, and the source material notes his eyes have this strange, terrifying glow to them. When Shukla tries to offer him some money, the beggar just delivers this incredibly chilling message about ghat. And then, and this is a classic horror trope, but it works so well, Shukla blinks for just 1 second. When he opens his eyes, the old man has completely vanished into thin air. No footsteps walking away, no crowds to hide in, just an empty platform. But despite all these massive red flags, the train finally rolls in, and Shukla boards this practically empty coach. The yellow overhead lights are flickering on and off, and outside his window, nothing but thick, rushing darkness. Then, suddenly, the train violently jerks to a halt right in the middle of a dense, pitch-black jungle. The doors creak open, and this beautiful young woman wearing a red sari slowly climbs aboard. Now, her face looks perfectly calm, but Shukla notices her eyes tell a completely different, frantic story. It's this stark visual contrast that instantly sets off alarm bells. You've got to notice the heavy, almost suffocating foreshadowing happening here. Shukla, trying to be normal, makes some polite conversation and asks about her husband. She smiles this incredibly unsettling smile and just casually mentions that our husband is dead. Then she looks deeply into his eyes with this terrifying intensity and drops this line, "Death never comes suddenly. It gives signs first." And literally on cue, the lights in the train flicker and the temperature inside the coach just plummets to freezing. I mean, the chill is palpable. Okay, we need to pay really close attention to the time right now. The source material goes out of its way to emphasize exactly when the climax of our story kicks off. It is exactly 2:30 a.m. when the train violently jerks to that sudden mechanical halt. The brakes are just screaming, and everything is plunged into the pitch-black void of the deep jungle.
Then comes the PA announcement, which really acts as the massive catalyst for the rest of the night. This crackling, static voice echoes through the empty coach, declaring a technical fault and saying the train cannot go any further. The second she hears this, the woman in the red sari stands up, tells Shukla her path lies through the jungle, and just steps right off the train. Now ask yourself, would you step off that train? No way, right? But against all his better judgment, against his mother's frantic warnings, and his own sheer terror, Shukla feels his legs moving on autopilot. He actually steps out of the relative safety of the train and follows her into the dark.
Let's walk through what happens next because it's basically a masterclass in escalating sensory horror. First, this torrential downpour starts. But as Shukla is walking behind the woman, he looks down and realizes her feet are leaving absolutely zero footprints in the wet mud. Second, a massive flash of lightning lights up the sky, and standing right there in the rain is the old beggar from the station, screaming one last warning not to take the path to Kali Ghat. Third, as they keep walking, they pass this ruined hut, and the crystal clear, terrifying sound of a baby crying starts echoing out of it. And finally, step 4, this horrifying, rotting stench completely fills the air, making it basically impossible to even breathe.
And that brings us to the absolute climax of the nightmare. The rhythmic, tinkling sound of the woman's anklets just stops. Shukla turns around and she's gone. But when he looks over toward a nearby tree, he sees her again. Except she has completely transformed. That red sari is now just caked in mud and blood. Her face is half burnt, and her eyes, they're completely pitch black. No pupils at all. She starts slowly advancing on him, declaring herself the spirit of Kali Ghat. And Shukla, entirely broken by fear, just turns and runs blindly into the darkness of the torrential storm.
Section 2. The horrifying truth, a clash of realities. So the narrative then immediately snaps us completely out of the nightmare. Shukla wakes up, but he's not in the mud and blood of the deep jungle anymore. He wakes up with warm, bright morning sunlight hitting his face. He's actually lying flat on his back on the exact same platform at Rajapur station where he started the night, and there's this whole crowd of confused villagers standing around him, splashing water on his face to wake him up. Now, this is where the psychological shock completely hits you. We are looking at a direct clash of two different realities. Shukla is frantic, right? He's grabbing the villagers, asking them about the train, the woman in the red sari, the jungle stop at 2:30 a.m. But the villagers are just staring at him in total confusion. They tell him that absolutely no train stopped there in the middle of the night. In fact, they break the news that the last train departed at 11:30 p.m. According to their physical reality, Shukla passed out and never even left the platform. Let's actually map this out, because the math does not work, and it reveals something deeply terrifying. Shuklaji was trapped in some kind of supernatural slipstream. He arrived at the station at 7 p.m. The actual physical last train of the night rolled through at 11:30 p.m. Yet Shukla vividly experienced this hours-long journey that culminated in a phantom stop at exactly 2:30 a.m. These timelines are entirely impossible to reconcile using any kind of normal logic. And to cap it all off, we get the final ingredient of a perfect urban legend: historical validation. As Shukla is sitting there shivering on the platform, an old woman in the crowd overhears him mumbling the words Kali Ghat. She leans in and whispers that years ago, a woman and her husband died a really tragic death at that exact spot in the jungle. According to the local folklore, that woman's burnt spirit still wanders the area, claiming any lost travelers who happen to stray onto her path. This one piece of evidence perfectly locks Shukla's impossible personal nightmare right into the established historical folklore of the region. So, wrapping up this explainer today, let's head back to the campfire. Those two young men are left sitting there in stunned silence, while the leaves of the banyan tree just rustle in the cold wind. Shukla's story leaves all of us with a lingering, deeply unsettling question. If physical reality dictates that the last train left at 11:30 p.m., then whose phantom train did he actually board that night? Was it just a hallucination brought on by extreme dread? Or did he briefly cross over into a dimension that belongs solely to the ghost of Kalighat? Some stories aren't just meant to be heard. They're meant to follow you. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and keep questioning the reality around you.